What's going on, guys? Welcome back to ChrisCast. When you think of what is the most iconic monster of all time, what comes to mind? You're probably thinking of vampires, werewolves, or the one I think is the most popular, zombies. The zombie genre became super popular in the early 2000s and beyond with movies like 28 Days Later, Zombieland, and Dawn of the Dead, bringing people's fears of the dead brought to life a reality on screen. This fascination with zombies spawned an entire genre of zombie games, and boy was there a lot of them. According to my research, there were at least 150 zombie games published since 1980, with the majority coming out after the year 2000. To say there is an ultimate zombie game would I think be a lost cause. But today I'd like to compare two of my favorite zombie games, Dead Rising and State of Decay 2. Dead Rising was published in 2006 by Capcom Studios. It featured a character named Frank West, who lands on top of a zombie-infested mall and follows his journey to find the truth behind the undead plague. It features sandbox gameplay with tons of customization, as well as a time-based system where the player only has 3 in-game days to complete their goals and escape alive. State of Decay 2 is a sandbox zombie survival game published in 2018 by Undead Labs. This game builds on the systems the developer established in State of Decay 1, featuring base building, quest lines, and randomized NPCs with tons of different abilities. It also features a variety of maps to run your settlement, as well as multiplayer gameplay. I absolutely love both of these games. I actually played them in very different points in my life. Dead Rising was maybe the first zombie game I ever played. I found this game terrifying, and I would spend hours working up the courage to fight a boss or explore a new zone of the mall. I was under the weather last summer and I was sort of stuck in my room for a few days, waiting to get better. To pass the time, I'd check out a game I hadn't touched in my Steam backlog. It seemed like a fun game and it involved zombies. I was down for that, so I checked it out. With an intense fever, I went on to play that game for almost 2 days straight. One of the most memorable gameplay experiences I have played. Both these games caught my attention and sucked me in completely. Today I want to compare them and decide which one is the most immersive zombie experience. We're going to have these games go head to head and see which one really deserves the top spot. I created a simple ranking system that I'll be using here. I heard your comments on my Dwarf Fortress vs. RimWorld video, and I hear ya. The number system was a bit convoluted. Instead, we'll be using an essentially all or nothing system for the following categories. Either the game wins that category or it doesn't. First, we have world building and lore, the zombies themselves, survival mechanics, the difficulty level of the games, combat and weapons, and finally, I think very important to a zombie game, audio and voice acting. The zombies gotta sound like zombies, right? I played each game for 4 hours to refresh myself, as well as to show you guys what a typical gameplay session looks like. First, I jumped into State of Decay 2. Lucky for me, instead of having to start completely fresh, I had a previous settlement where I could get survivors. I went with my top 3 survivors from my previous playthrough, Lance, Vasquez, and Palmer, who specialized in stealth, medicine, and being in the army, I guess. It was kind of a rough start. Almost our entire region was covered in these plague hearts. These areas essentially claim an area and spread a dangerous version of the virus that can be fatal to your settlers. We set up our base and started setting out for supplies. A key aspect of State of Decay is that every day your settlers use supplies, which means we either need to scavenge more or set up outposts to generate these supplies. I noticed that our lowest supply amount was in our medicine category, so I decided a good place to start would be at a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, to claim this base, we need to destroy the plague heart that had contaminated that region. I sent our most badass, hardcore settler in to take it out. Palmer here. He's got military experience, he's a great shooter. What could go wrong? And it went a little worse than expected. Poor Palmer here was able to destroy it, but he was left heavily infected, barely standing on his feet. We tried to get some medicine for him using our stealth character, but unfortunately we ran out of time. The infection was too severe. Like any classic zombie movie, it was time to put him out of his misery. His last words stuck with me.
You've done your best. We'll take it from here.
Whatever. As long as I don't come back.
Rest in peace, Palmer. This was a massive blow to our base. We needed to bounce back fast. I started taking missions in the area to build our reputation with the locals. And we also recruited a new settler, Tracy, who was sort of a tech expert. She seemed pretty chill. With our new settler, Tracy, we sent her out to meet settlers in the area and look into some noisy neighbors they've been beefing with. She zoomed over and found a bunch of crazy stuff. The first group willingly gave back the meds without a fight, but then tried to ambush us as we left, so I went ahead and pulled out my GTA skills and sort of ran them over. No big deal. After doing some more base building, we got a call from some mechanics in the area called the Engine Bangers. Kind of a sick name, sounds like a rock band or something. We met up with them and agreed to help retrieve a lost vehicle. I guess because they're mechanics, they like cars. We also made some of the most awkward small talk of all time. You gotta hear it for yourself here.
So you're like a car mechanic or something?
That's right. I want to set up shop. Get some of the busted cars around here working again. Gotta do something, right?
Okay.
Unfortunately, our truck was toast, but we did get the salvageable parts and brought those back to their base. Another job well done. Out of nowhere, Anthony suddenly remembered that he had an aunt that was a prepper. You just thought about this now? You're like months into the apocalypse. Also, her name is Aunt Peggy. Could this be the Aunt Peggy from King of the Hill? We had to look into it. After searching our old prepper base, the only things we found were stray zombies and a mysterious letter written in some sort of code. We left that mystery unsolved for now.
I found one of my aunt's prepper plans. It's in code, but if I decipher it, maybe I can find out where she went.
After this, we took a few more odd jobs and recruited our fourth settler, Dorothea, a utilities expert who absolutely hates going to parties. We've done so much so far, even in these short few hours, but all our scavenging and zombie killing has been leading up to one last mission: getting revenge for the death of Palmer. I chose Vasquez to lead the mission and to take out the plague heart nearby. It was set up in an abandoned grocery store. I loaded her up with all the explosives we had and tons of shotgun ammo. At first we had trouble finding it, and then once we started finding this thing, it summoned so many reinforcements, she was completely trapped in. And unfortunately, we lost another one. Once again, the Plague Heart had won, and our 4-hour gameplay session was over. Although we lost 2 of our best survivors, the base lived on to fight another day. And with that, it was time to play our next game, Dead Rising. We open with our protagonist, Frank West, helicoptering into the small town of Willamette, Colorado. Frank's a photojournalist who's looking for his next big scoop, and he definitely finds it as he's passing over town, seeing what he thinks are strange riots happening below. After getting attacked by military helicopters, Frank jumps onto the roof of the mall and has a bizarre interaction with a man who we find out later is named Carlito.
So why don't you just tell me already? What's going on?
I think you'd better see for yourself. This, my friend, is hell.
He's very unsettling, and we get out of there as quick as we can. We enter the mall and meet a group of survivors who've barricaded the front door. Here's where Frank first learns that the riders are actually zombies. We meet a few older people, one of which seems really angry at us for some reason.
You! Stop right there! Do you have any idea what you've done? Why did you summon me to this place? What are you planning?
Would you calm down? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Right as Frank is walking away, chaos erupts as a woman destroys the barricade to get to her dog. The worst part is the zombies were not even trying to get the dog. It was just sitting there chilling, and she got everybody killed. Zombies pour in, and Frank's barely able to escape in one piece. In the security room, I meet Jesse and Brad, who seem to be on some kind of secret mission. I decide to dig into this mystery further, and I join Brad in the food court. I arrive to find Brad being shot at by the man from the rooftop. After shooting him like so many times, he eventually flees, and Brad finally reveals that him and Jesse are Department of Homeland Security agents. This is a classic early 2000s plot here, guys. We agree to keep working together, even though Frank clearly hates the idea. We head to Paradise Plaza and try and fail to recruit the old man from earlier, who turns out to be some kind of scientist named Dr. Barnaby.
Until you can guarantee me safe passage.
Just open this gate. Just open this gate. It's for your protection.
I am not opening any gate. Thank you very much. I'm going to stay right here.
Dr. Barnaby.
Safe.
Sir.
Thank you and goodbye.
Dr. Barnaby?
Goodbye.
According to the scoop notification, something was going to happen at 6 a.m. While we were waiting, it was time to explore. We went to the park in the middle of the mall and encountered a group of escaped convicts in a machine gun armed jeep. They killed this poor woman's husband, but were able to get her out of there and back to the storeroom. Next, we get a call that the theme park ride in Wonderland Plaza has gone haywire, and we try to shut it down, but we're interrupted by a killer clown with not one, but 2 chainsaws.
Everyone used to laugh at me. I was a walking punchline.
After a lengthy battle, he falls on his own chainsaws. Honestly, a pretty brutal way to go. We saved Greg, the security guard who was stuck on the ride, and dropped him off in the bathroom for some reason. He said it was a shortcut. I just think he's insane. After this, we kind of just goofed around till 6 a.m. Cue the silly montage of Frank. At 6 a.m. we see something truly shocking on the security cameras. Carlito's back, and he's kidnapped Dr. Barnaby, the scientist from earlier. It's all coming together. All these characters are connected. Brad and Frank rush over and find the doctor dangling over a horde of zombies. After a brutal fight, actually died here twice, we get Carlito to run once again and save the doctor. In the battle, Brad is seriously wounded. I mean, it looks bad. And he needs meds fast. I rush over to the supermarket because it has a pharmacy, kind of like a Walgreens kind of deal. And we encounter the most insane enemy so far. A supermarket manager who has taken Carlito's, I think, sister hostage. They're dressed exactly the same, so I'm thinking they're related. After a tough battle, I take him down, and he drops this classic line before he passes away.
Clean up! Register 6!
And we learned some important lore here. That the zombie plague in Willamette is somehow connected to some conspiracy in a town called Santa Cabeza, which I believe just means Saint Head. I'm not sure who was in charge of that, naming that on the dev team, but it sounds very funny. We bring the meds back to Brad and he's stabilized for now. We also have another encounter with a very creepy cameraman named Kent. And we also help this guy named Ronald the Sandwich Man. This is just what I call him because when we meet him, he's literally eaten every sandwich in the restaurant he was stuck in. He's only been stuck in there for like 2 days, so that's gotta be like 200 sandwiches. It's honestly out of control. When we left the security room again, we came across that cult that was hinted at earlier. The terrifying cult leader yells at us and sends his minions after us. I'm able to take them all down, mainly using all my ammo and throwing guitars. That was just a spur of the moment thing. We rescue the person they were about to sacrifice, but unfortunately, I mistakenly forgot to go to the security room for the main quest, and I'd failed the main story, like, completely. It's pretty frustrating, but it is how the game is designed. It's a time-based challenge kind of game, so there was still lots to do with our remaining hour of gameplay. So after getting a fancy new outfit, I followed up on a lead from Otis, the maintenance guy, saying that something strange was happening in a women's clothing store. Next, we're faced with the most terrifying enemy yet. A massive cop, I don't know how else to describe them, but a massive cop who seems to love torturing people. 4 survivors are trapped there tied to the shelves. I'm able to beat this fight, but just barely, only 1 health left. It was honestly, let me tell you guys, I was stressing. The trick to this fight was just bait out those taser attacks after each round of bullets. So I got shot a lot, but we got the job done. They collapsed in a very odd and dramatic fashion. After freeing the remaining survivors, I try to escort them back to the security room, but like many zombie movies, we're outnumbered in a final standoff. Ultimately, the zombies take me down. And with that, we reach the end of our Dead Rising portion. I've definitely wanted to keep playing, there were so many secrets waiting to be discovered, but for now, it's time to compare our 2 games and crown a winner. Let's first look at each game's world building and lore. When analyzing this, I do think it's important that the game make the world feel lived in, even if it's the apocalypse. The tragic nature of a zombie apocalypse is that the world that was once filled with people living their lives was suddenly turned upside down by the zombies. State of Decay's approach to this is focused on little visual details and radio broadcasts. Each time the player searches a house, or abandoned hospital, or even just walks along the street, you see signs that a world in motion came to a sudden stop. Cars litter the roads, houses are still often locked, zombies congregate at the places they once lived. The radio broadcasts are the main way you learn about the broader world, beyond just your starting region. Through broadcasts when I was recording, I learned about a mysterious AI in a place called Trumbull Valley, and frequent survivor broadcasts do make you feel like other survivors are still out there fighting to make their way. Dead Rising takes the world we live in and destroys it in front of our eyes. The first thing we experience is a bird's eye view of the destruction in Willamette, Colorado, as zombies tear the city apart, surrounding stranded citizens. It almost reminds me of that movie Apocalypse Now, in the way that the main character descends into the zombie quarantine zone, and the farther they go in, the more bizarre things get. Dead Rising has quite a bit of lore hidden beneath the surface, but requires multiple playthroughs to thoroughly experience them, based on the time-based mechanic. There is a sandbox mode once you complete the main story. I do think both games really do a wonderful job of immersing the player in a fleshed out world, but I think Dead Rising takes the lead here. Dead Rising always takes time to remind the player that the world is always changing, even when the player doesn't interact with it. State of Decay attempts to do the same thing, but often feels less urgent, as there will always be more survivors to interact with later, while Dead Rising's characters are all in jeopardy of dying if you don't step in. World building goes to Dead Rising. Next up, the zombies. Maybe the most essential category of all, let's compare how each game portrays the zombies. They both feature very different types of zombies. State of Decays tend to be quite fast when compared to Dead Rising, and also feature special zombies like screamers and these giants that can take out your whole base. State of Decay also has the plague heart system, where zones controlled by the dead are filled with stronger zombies and can't have bases built until they're cleared. Dead Rising has a much simpler zombie system. It's very much your classic George Romero zombies that you'd see in The Walking Dead. They're slow, dumb, and very clumsy. They're also incredibly strong, and a group can quickly overtake you with just sheer strength alone. This only gets worse at night when the zombies get red eyes and become much more aggressive. Uniquely, you can also see what's controlling the zombies as well. They have these creepy wasp-like insects that are controlling them. It tells you that they're not magically created or a virus, but actually more like a parasite. I do think State of Decay has the more interesting zombies due to the sheer variety, as well as the zombie behaviors being more fleshed out. Dead Rising is certainly not bad when it comes to zombie portrayals, but reflects the more limited type of zombies that were popular at the time. State of Decay wins this one. This one you might see it coming a mile away. State of Decay is just in another league when it comes to survival mechanics. You have to worry about food, medicine, ammo, building materials, sleep, and injuries, and manage them accordingly. Dead Rising's survival system is almost non-existent. You have to keep your health bar above 0, and can heal using food or leveling up, but food isn't really used to nourish the player in any realistic way. I understand that Dead Rising is a commentary on consumerism, and having the player eat in excess kinda adds to that theme, but State of Decay still wins the survival category easily. These games are both what I would call challenging. Small mistakes can compile and completely ruin a run. I think I would consider Dead Rising to be more challenging, but it's also very clearly intentional by the devs. You only have 3 days to get everything done, but in reality it's nearly impossible to complete every quest in the same playthrough. The game is a purposely uphill battle that is designed to be replayed multiple times and learn from your mistakes. State of Decay I do think is easier, as you can routinely replace slain survivors, and quests are randomly generated, so there's always plenty of time to build up your gear before taking on dangerous goals. Honestly, most of my mistakes in State of Decay came from me trying to do too much and being way too ambitious. If I had waited until I could arm multiple survivors with explosives, the plague hearts I kept dying from would have been incredibly simple. I do think that Dead Rising wins the difficulty category, because even when you're playing smart and calculated, it'll still be a challenging experience. Let's talk about the main reason many people play zombie games, the combat. Dead Rising is built around a system of interactable items that can be used as weapons. Different things I used as a weapon in my playthrough were rocks, a fish, a dumbbell, a toy sword, and even a Mega Man blaster. If you think of it, it can probably become a weapon in Dead Rising. It's super fun to pick up random everyday items and see what moves Frank can use with them. There's also an incentive to kill as many zombies as you can, as you'll level up faster and acquire new moves and upgrades. Where Dead Rising mainly falls short is in combat with psychopaths, the game's boss battles. They have way too much health. I remember some bosses would take 60 to 90 bullets straight to the head and still be up. It's honestly very immersion breaking when a simple boss fight drags on just way too long. State of Decay's combat system may not be as creative, but it certainly is more fleshed out. Survivors can use guns, melee weapons, bombs, and more to take on the zombies, and combat feels smooth and fast-paced. It's possible to take on the zombies in a variety of ways as well, using stealth, vehicle combat, and good old-fashioned gunplay to take them down. I wanted to give Dead Rising a win here with how creative the combat is, but State of Decay just has so much more polish and thought put into its fighting system. This last category is on the audio and voice acting. State of Decay 2 has wonderful atmospheric sound effects. Exploring ruined buildings can be really eerie, evoking great games like Resident Evil as you creep around corners in the dark. Where the game falls a bit short is in its voice acting. The characters are lifeless in how they interact. It can make it really hard to get emotionally attached to most of the NPCs. Dead Rising's voice and audio, although not perfect, is uniquely its own. Characters say absolutely insane things, or just express their desires and fears in a way that's very believable. This is most seen in the main character Frank West. He is an exaggeration of the macho hero character that was everywhere in games during the early 2000s. He gets straight to the point and is downright rude sometimes, often getting himself in situations that were very avoidable. A good example of this is when they were interrogating Dr. Barnaby, and he just kind of started walking up and taking photos awkwardly, and literally just gets kicked out of the room. If he just had been a bit more diplomatic with the DHS agents, they might have been more likely to tell him the info he needed to get his news story. The game's music is perhaps its greatest strength. Each boss fight features a rock song from the early 2000s. My favorite is by far the song that plays when you encounter the convicts in the park. It really ramps up the pressure you feel as a player to get the heck out of there. I'd love to see more modern games bring some of this back. Another game series that does a great job bringing real-world music in is GTA's radio stations. Those are iconic. Dead Rising takes the audio category as well. You may have noticed at this point, each game has won 3 categories, making our last category, Fun Factor, essentially the tiebreaker. I like using Fun Factor as a category because if a game isn't fun or enjoyable in some way, it doesn't meet the basic goal of most games. I want to be clear that I really did enjoy playing both of these games, and will most likely play them even after I post this video. However, I have to be honest, Dead Rising was just so much more enjoyable for me. It could be nostalgia, but I often found myself wanting to keep playing even after each recording. Whereas with State of Decay, I would end the recording and not really think about it until I turned it on again. Just for that reason alone, Dead Rising wins Fun Factor and becomes today's winner. I want to thank you all so much for watching. This has really been a passion project of mine, and I hope it shows. If you have any games that you want to see face off in a versus video, feel free to reach out in the comments or in my Discord server. See y'all in the next one.